Okay. Yay.
Okie dokie. All right. How should we start this one? Just we're back at it.
Yeah.
We're back at it with Ryan Ralston.
Yeah. I tried to like join all the Facebook groups. I did try and join one. I forgot the name of it off the top of my head. But uh Carrie, right?
Mm-hmm.
She reached out and was like, "Hey, just so you know, like we can't accept you into this," because I was like, I just hosted a podcast. I just want to learn things and like spread awareness. And I guess it was one that's like super
Like just for parents or
yeah,
something.
private for them, which I totally understand. But I was just like trying to join like
All of them?
everything I possibly
Yeah.
could. So I totally understand that that's a special safe place for them. But I wanted to just be able to share like all the pages I possibly could.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You guys are incredible. Did you by chance look at the Parents Behind the Pinwheels Facebook
Mm-hmm.
page?
Mm-hmm.
Holly and her team do amazing, amazing work. We absolutely love Parents Behind the Pinwheels.
Yeah. Yeah, they're super active too. Like
Mhm.
they're constantly on there. So
Yeah.
that's a good one. Yeah, just trying to figure out all the pages to follow.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I know we said it in the first episode, but like, I can't believe I had no idea, or you had no idea that this was
This thing happened.
happening. And I feel like if we don't know, like a lot of people don't.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
we're still trying to grasp it, but also figure out like all the different resources and places to get information or to read stories that families are sharing. Like, I'm still mind blown that we didn't know anything about it. And that just makes me feel like a lot of people don't know, but they need to know.
There was a girl
Yeah.
who reached out to us on Instagram, who lives in Missouri and said she was so grateful for us for covering a case like this because it happened
Yeah.
to her family.
Yep. Sorry, I keep adjusting.
And I was going to tell you guys too, at any point when anybody reaches out to y'all, please, you're more than welcome to provide my email address, my phone
Okay.
number,
Okay.
send them our way. And
Okay.
because we operate in all 50 states. And so it might be outside of my region or territory that I'm responsible for, but we will get them in contact with somebody who can help them.
Okay, I will send that to you when we're done with this.
Definitely. There was one other thing I was gonna, oh, I I went to Bentley's baseball game and a lot of his teammates, like half the team is from the Chattanooga area and the other half is from the North Georgia area. And I went to the baseball game and I was like, okay, Georgia people, do y'all know who your governor is?
Yeah.
Y'all know what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are y'all voting? Like, have y'all looked into this? Like
Mhm.
all, and they were like, I was like, yep, here's the link to the episode. Here are all the pages on social. Y'all need to
Mhm.
look into this because I had no idea. But y'all live in Georgia, like y'all can vote on these things.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's the same reaction we get too. Like if I wear one of these t-shirts out in public and someone's like, "Oh, what is that?" and I explain it to them, their mouths immediately they fall open
Yes.
like, "What? I had no idea."
Mhm.
And so we're doing our best to spread the word. And you guys, I'm incredibly grateful for you guys and your support and getting it out there to your listeners as well.
Absolutely.
We appreciate you talking to us. A lot of, I mean, this stuff is hard and sensitive. And sometimes it's difficult for even the necessary conversations and information and stuff to get out. But I had someone say, like, do you and Natalie ever get nervous, like, for your safety? And I was like, we have been a few times, but we don't really care.
Yeah.
Like,
So
so be it.
someone asked me the same thing, right? Like someone said, "Are you worried because you're being so vocal? You're speaking out on behalf of these families. You're speaking out against the government. Are you worried about like retaliation or someone coming after you?" And we may have talked about this, the first go round. And I would be honored if someone got ugly with me or got mad at me for speaking. I'll be like, you know what? I'm doing the right thing.
Exactly.
I am
Yep.
doing the right thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Doing the right thing sometimes, and honestly, in my opinion, most of the time should ruffle feathers. It
It
should
should.
make people uncomfortable.
Yeah, if you're doing it right, you're going to upset some people, and if you're doing it
Yep.
right, you're going to kind of shock the conscience of some individuals who might might be turned off by it initially, but then we'll come around once you realize that we're having a rational conversation. So
Right. Yep. Exactly.
I got my hair cut last week, and my hairdresser is pregnant, and they live in Georgia,
yeah,
and she's pregnant with her second child. And I was like, girl, be careful what doctors you take them to. And I told her the story, and
Yep.
she was like, oh my gosh, I've got to listen to this,
Mhm.
especially welcoming their second child into the world, you
Yep.
know?
Yep.
it's scary that you have to really think about the things prior to taking your child to a pediatrician or to a hospital. Like I had a friend of mine reach out to me maybe a couple of weeks ago, and she said, you know, Ryan, I'm following your work. I'm following the work of You Are the Power. I have to bring my son to Children's Healthcare in Atlanta for a follow-up visit. How worried do you think I should be? And I said, well, it's a genuine concern that you should have. And I said, what I would recommend that you do is prior to going in, go ahead and make copies of all your child's pediatrician records. And then when you go into the hospital to meet one of the doctors, just let them know that you're going to record the conversation. Like just get your phone out and record the conversation, protect yourself, and then have copies of your medical records just in case. And I said, it's unfortunate that you have to take that precaution while you're getting your child seen by a healthcare professional, but it's just the unfortunate times that we live in that you could be falsely accused of abuse when
Yep.
you absolutely haven't done nothing wrong.
Mhm.
Yep. It is scary.
Yeah.
Very scary.
You want to get into it?
Yeah, let's go. Do we want to kind of start the way we did last time? I feel like that's, unless you had any.
How did we
like,
start?
Like just letting him kind of
Yeah, go.
tell about the Hernandez family and
Yeah.
what they're going through or have gone through and what they're
Sure.
currently dealing with.
Yep. So with the Hernandez case, I would like to start maybe 6 months into it because we've been involved with this family for a little over a year now. As a matter of fact, I'll get into more of this later, but they're going back to court tomorrow, family court tomorrow. So I like to start at about the halfway point of our involvement with You Are the Power's involvement with the Hernandez case, because it is the catalyst for all the families that we're currently helping in Georgia. This case is a catalyst for all those cases. And the reason why I like to start about 6 months in, because 6 months ago, Matt and Tucky Hernandez were not living together. They were husband and wife. They were under strict bond conditions. They were not allowed to live inside the same home. And the state, meaning DFACS, our Department of our Division of Family and Children's Services, Child Protective Division here in Georgia, and the juvenile court judge in Forsyth County, Georgia, where Matt and Tucky live, had recommended that Matt and Tucky have their parental rights terminated. So 6 months into this ordeal, they hadn't lived together for up 4 or 5 months. They haven't been able to see their children unsupervised. And they were told by the state that within the next 2 to 3 weeks, we're going to put your children up for adoption. And so we had been working with the family for a couple of months at that point. And what we like to do and what we've done in all these cases is we go public with them. And so we have email templates set up for anybody who wants to. You don't have to live in Georgia. So anybody who wants to send an email to the elected officials there in Forsyth County to show support for Matt and Tucky Hernandez. And so I was in court with them the afternoon that they went in for the family court hearing, where they were really expecting the judge to terminate their parental rights. And I watched the DFACS worker, the case worker, get up on the stand, and she made a comment that really stuck out to me. And that was when I really believed that the work that we were doing was making a difference. She got up on the stand on the record and said, you know, Your Honor, I have received over 500 emails from people around the world. I've received emails from people in Germany, people in New Zealand, people in Australia, people from across the country want to know what I'm doing. Like, why am I doing this to Matt Tucky Hernandez? And she was actually complaining because other people were holding her accountable for her actions. And that was the way I took from it. And I sat there for a second and I started thinking about that. So you had a government official, a DFACS official, who was absolutely bound and determined to make sure that Matt Tucky had their parental rights terminated and had their 2 baby girls put up for adoption, was actually on the stand complaining that people were holding her accountable for her actions. And one of the Georgia team members for You Are the Power got up on the stand and testified. And her name is Jennifer Williams. She does a fantastic job for these families. Her and her husband are former foster parents, and they just live right up the road from Matt and Tucky. And I'm going off on a tangent here, but Jennifer and her family and her husband Jonathan were foster parents in Georgia for 13 years when they became involved with the Hernandez case, because they received, they had Matt Tucky's babies for like a week, right? While they were still fostering children. And so Jonathan and Jenny spoke out, like sent emails to DFACS like, hey, something's wrong here. These children are not being abused. Their daughter is not being abused. You guys have made a mistake. And let's say 3 or 4 weeks later, DFACS closes their home. After 13 years, DFACS closed their home and says, you can no longer foster children. Your values and our values no longer align. We no longer need your services. Thank you. So Jennifer was on the stand, and I think it was either the attorney for DFACS or the children's guardian ad litem had mentioned you are the power to Jennifer, right? Said, hey, are you involved in You Are the Power, or how did You Are the Power come involved? And, and so Jenny was just like, I'm not the catalyst for this. I'm not the one who necessarily got You Are the Power involved. But for lack of a better term, she said, hey, I'm just glad they are because they're making a difference. And it was surprising to me that the children's guardian ad litem, I believe that was who asked her for that question, was so worried about what we were doing versus her taking care of the best interests of the children.
Yep.
And then with the DFACS worker, when she got up there and was complaining about the emails, we had a ruling that afternoon that we did not expect. The judge sided with the defense and went against DFACS and said, I am not going to terminate their parental rights. I'm going to reunify this family. And so after 6 long months, and that's where I like to start at the middle of the case, after 6 long months of fighting tooth and nail, Matt Tucky fighting, their defense team fighting, us joining in the fight and helping them out, finally we made a little bit of headway, right? Headway was made, and that there was a light at the end of the tunnel, right? So Matt Tucky still have pending criminal felony charges. However, DFACS at that point was upset because they weren't going to get to seize these children and put them up for adoption. And you can actually see the attorney for DFACS, like you see the look on her face. She's actually upset with the judge's ruling. And so was the DFACS case manager. But the judge listened to the evidence and, in our opinion, made the right ruling that Matt and Tucky had not, abused their children, and that there was going to be a plausible medical explanation for what happened to their daughter, and that she was going to order a reunification. We fully expected to go into court that day, and it was on everybody's mind that Matt Tucky could have lost their parental rights and that their children would have been put up for adoption, which was unusual because in Georgia you have to work a case plan before that happens. It's usually 15 months. And at that point, Matt Tucky's babies had only been in foster care or been in the state's care for just several months, not anywhere near the 15 months. And so that was why it was one of the things that we thought was unusual, that the state was so intent on terminating parental rights and putting their children up for adoption. And so that's where we are right now with the case. Tomorrow they go back to family court for what's called a case review. And what we're looking to do, and their defense team has filed a motion, is they want to have Matt Tucky's daughters taken out of a stranger's home, which they're currently in a home about maybe 2 hours from where Matt and Tucky live. And so the babies are having to be transported for visitation. And so the attorneys have filed a motion to have the 2 girls placed in with Matt and Tucky's brother-in-law and sister-in-law who live just a few miles down the road from them. We think it's going to be better for the stability of the children, the stability of the family, because the judge has ordered reunification. And as a matter of fact, the aunt and uncle have had visitation with the daughter since then. And so they're reestablishing that bond. And so again, we're hoping that the judge will grant the defense motion and allow Matt Tucky's daughters to live with their aunt and uncle until the criminal charges are resolved. And we're anticipating that taking place sometime before the year's over. And so that's what we have going on tomorrow. And I would like to start now at the beginning for what happened with Matt Tucky, unless you guys have some questions.
I have a couple questions. Okay, so tomorrow is in family court and
Yeah.
it's a case review.
Yeah, it's a review, a case review that's supposed to happen every 90 days or 100
Right,
days.
just to get updates and things like that. Okay.
Yes.
And could you do you know, or can you give me the judge's name?
I'll give you the judge's name not on a recording, but I'll give it to
Gotcha.
you outside.
Okay.
Because, and the reason why, and I'll say
Yeah,
this,
I was just telling her like family court and juvenile court, like they are very private and
Yeah.
as they should be. So I was just telling her, I'm like, do we think this would be criminal court or family court? Because if it's family court, there's no way we could get like go and have access to what's going on. Like it's very private.
yeah. And for you guys' records and for your case study and for your work that you're doing, I'll give you the judge's name
Okay.
off the recording. But
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
since it is family court. And
Oh,
so
sorry, the other question I have, and you may have said it and I might have missed it, but uh the kids are in the care of a foster family right now.
they are, yes. And
Okay.
since the state sees the children, they've been in foster care, with the exception of about 2 weeks. They've been in foster
Okay.
care with for the most part a stranger.
Okay, and the 2 weeks were the I think was her name Jennifer?
Oh, I don't think Jennifer had custody of them. She was just,
Jennifer
Okay.
and her, and I'll go back over that, but Jennifer and her husband had them for a weekend. They just happened
Okay.
to be still in the foster care system and unrelated to
Gotcha.
this case at the time.
Okay.
With the foster moms like, hey, we got to go out of town for a couple of days, and then Jonathan and Jennifer just by luck,
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
or divine intervention, however you want to say it, ended up with Matt Tucky's girls for a few days.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Those are the only things I had.
okay, tell me this story because I'm
Yeah.
very interested.
I know.
Okay. And when I say that this is the catalyst for all the families that we're currently helping in Georgia, this is why. Matt Tucky had a medically fragile daughter, right? And we've talked about that before during the previous 2 episodes about what medically fragile is. So they had a daughter who was chronically sick after birth, and she was having like this discoloration on her skin. It wasn't bruising; it was just an odd discoloration. It would show up and it would disappear. It would show up and disappear. Her legs and her joints and arms would swell up. So Matt and Tucky would take the baby to the doctor, just trying to find answers. Hey, what's going on? And in their mind, I think the worst fear was they thought that she possibly had leukemia, right? Some type of bloodborne cancer. Like, because I mean, those are some of the signs and symptoms as well. So like parents' worst nightmare, my baby might have leukemia. And so they were constantly going to the doctor, like, hey, what's going on? Like, I don't understand. Why is her leg swelling up? What are these odd discoloration on her skin? Pops up and goes away. And so ultimately, pediatrician says, we're not 100% sure, but we would like for you to take your baby to Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. Just take the baby to CHOA. They're specialists. They could probably do a full workup and gain a better understanding of what's going on with your daughter. So they did that, like as any loving, concerned parents would. They followed the advice of the pediatrician. After multiple visits, they took their baby immediately to CHOA. And who they ran into there was Dr. Stephen Mesner. Dr. Mesner is one of the child abuse pediatricians that works for CHOA. He's one of 5 that works at CHOA. We have, I think, 6 in the state. The other works at a hospital outside Metro Atlanta. And so during the workup, they did x-rays. And so there were fractures on the baby's skeleton in various stages of healing. And so Dr. Mesner immediately determined that to be child abuse, right? Unexplained fractures. Mom and dad had no idea what was going on. Mom and dad had, done nothing wrong. They've not harmed their baby. They've not abused their baby. They were just as shocked as the doctor when they came back and said there's fractures in various stages of healing. Because Matt and Tucky could not give a plausible explanation, Dr. Mesner defaulted to his position of abuse. And so one of the analogies that I just had a conversation with a friend of mine prior to jumping on the call, and this was an analogy that she gave me, and I think it's absolutely fits the scenario. During a murder investigation, the decedent is taken in for an autopsy, right? A pathologist looks over the evidence and makes a determination. Hey, this was either a homicide or it's not homicide. And if they can make the determination as to if it was a homicide, how is it likely that the decedent was killed? But that doesn't end the investigation right there. That's just a small piece of the puzzle, right? It's just a small little snippet of an investigation that needs to take place independent of that pathologist opinion. However, with child abuse pediatricians, specifically child abuse pediatricians at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, they do no outside independent investigation, right? They look at something, they say it's abuse, and by default, that means it is abuse. So what they end up doing is child abuse protocol gets initiated. DFACS, or Child Protective Services here in Georgia, is notified. A rapid response team member shows up to CHOA because they actually have a designated team to show up to CHOA. A member of that rapid response team shows up and Dr. Mesner's team says, this baby has been abused. Now, understanding that baby has not had a full workup yet, the default position is abuse. So the only thing that DFACS knows at that point in time is there has been a child with unexplained rib fractures. A child abuse pediatrician says abuse, therefore it must be abuse. DFACS notifies local law enforcement. Local law enforcement gets involved. And so you have two agencies who have failed in their due diligence, right? You have DFACS and you have local law enforcement who are equally contributing to this nightmare that Matt Tuckey are getting ready to start experiencing. And what I mean by that is neither agency does their due diligence. They simply rely on the opinion of a doctor. They accept the opinion as a fact, do no other independent investigation, and they seize both of Matt and Chucky's girls. So they're put into state's care. Initially, because local law enforcement is involved, because mom handles most of the day-to-day care for the babies, Tuckey Hernandez is arrested. She's charged with cruelty to children in the first degree and aggravated battery, which are felonies in Georgia, which can carry upwards of 40 to 60 years in confinement. So Tuckey is arrested. She's charged. She bonds out. Part of the bond conditions are that Matt and Tuckey cannot live in the same house. Nor can Matt and Tuckey have any contact with their immediate family, which would be the aunt and uncle that ultimately gets involved in the case. And we hope that the judge rules in our favor tomorrow and puts the girls with their aunt and uncle. So a few months, let's say about a month later, 3 to 4 weeks later, law enforcement comes in and they arrest Matt Hernandez. They charge Matt with the same crimes. Matt bonds out, and part of his bond conditions are he cannot live with his wife.
May I don't mean to interrupt you, but
Yeah.
I'm inferring that the reason that Tucky's bond condition and also Matt's, that they cannot live together, is that a matter of the courts thinking that they may plot to flee, or
There was no, okay, so and I'll back up too. So in Georgia, like when you're granted bond, they factor that in, is a flight risk, or are they going to intimidate
Right.
witnesses, things of that nature. And so the district attorney's office in Forsyth County, their logic was they are both witnesses to this case and those witnesses cannot communicate. I'm
Okay.
sorry that they're husband and wife, they just can't live together and talk.
okay, that makes sense.
So, yeah.
I
And
was
so,
just like that to me. I'm like, what are they afraid they're gonna like plan to get away? Like, what was
What
it?
was the
But that,
reasoning?
yeah, that didn't cross my mind, but that makes sense. Okay.
yeah. And so that's what the district attorney's office said. Hey, it's just our policy. Case witnesses can't have contact. I'm sorry that they're husband and wife. Not only can they not have contact, whether it's like their phone or, text message and things like that, they just can't live together either.
How
So-
long did that last for them?
Almost a year, if not quite over a year. So the case begins to progress from there, right? Their babies are put into foster care, and then temporarily the babies are given over to the aunt and uncle. While they are in the care of the aunt and uncle, the baby that they believe was abused again starts getting that odd discoloration on her skin. And it pops up, goes away, pops up, goes away. So what DFACS determines is, because aunt and uncle report this, like, hey, there's this same discoloration's back, the same discoloration that, my family brought the baby to the doctor for to begin with is present. So DFACS takes the children out of the aunt and uncle's care and says, what likely happened was y'all let Matt or Tuckey come back into the home, to y'all's home, and abuse the baby. So we're taking the babies from y'all as well. They're put back into foster care. And so over the course of the next several months, the babies are bounced around from home to home to home, no stability, because they'll go to foster care. Foster parents say, look, we don't want the kids. So they just get bounced around. And the reason why they don't want the kids is the baby, the one who is alleged to have been abused, is still experiencing these same medical conditions. They
And
are
I'm
not being
assuming not
addressed.
getting medical care or
Proper medical care, at
right,
least.
or at least seeing professionals that can look into what is happening with this child. Like,
Because guess where the baby goes for its sole care?
CHOA.
CHOA. And guess what CHOA doesn't want to do? Acknowledge that they've made a mistake.
Mhm.
And so the only doctors that the children are allowed to see are either doctors from CHOA or at clinics that are supported by CHOA. And so now that the babies are in state's care, mom and dad no longer have access to their medical records. They can't even know what's going on with their own children. Even though the parental rights have not been terminated, CHOA locks down mom and dad's opportunity to see what's going on with their own children, which is standard operating procedure for them. And we've seen this time and time again with all the cases that we're trying to help, families that we're trying to help.
Again, because, people that abuse their children fight to get their kids' medical records and, see if they're being treated or cared for or looked at.
Or even take them to the doctor.
Right.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, at the dependency hearing, right? So when the family goes before the family court judge for a dependency hearing to determine whether or not the children are need to be dependent upon the state for their care, the family brings in experts, medical experts, doctors, who says, this is an underlying health condition. The baby likely has some type of OI or maybe some type of EDS, some type of hypermobility issues. These are not fractures that the baby has. There's something that is going on here that we can explain medically, but it's not abuse. As a matter of fact, one of the doctors who testified on behalf of the family, Dr. Christopher Sperry, was the former chief medical examiner for the state of Georgia. Dr. Sperry is a well-respected doctor. He worked for the GBI here, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, as the state's chief medical examiner for decades. He is retired. And because he no longer testifies for the state, DFACS did their best to discredit him at the hearing. And so the judge ultimately sides with DFACS, which is very common in these cases, and determines that Matt and Tucky's girls are dependent upon the state for their care. They discredit other medical experts who says this is not abuse. They go with Dr. Stephen Mesner, who says it is abuse, even though he didn't do a full workup at the time. And the judge says it is more probable than not that Matt and Tucky have abused their baby. Right. And so that's what happened. And the judge determined that the babies were dependent on the state for care. And so that's really when Matt and Tucky's nightmare began, right? When the judge ordered that, because their girls were officially in state's custody. They didn't have access to their medical records. And not only do they not have access to their medical records, DFACS limits what doctors that mom and dad can take their babies to. DFACS tries their best. And the reason why I can say this with 100% certainty is I have seen it. Like I have witnessed it. I have copies of documentation where DFACS actually, the caseworker goes on there on the paperwork that mom and dad submits to take their baby to the doctor and marks off and then says, this is not necessary. This is not necessary medical testing. This is not necessary. Initials it and sends it up. So DFACS is literally denying mom and dad their due process, right? Like the state saying you have abused your children. There's no other plausible explanation than abuse. When mom and dad says absolutely not, let's go get my baby tested because we do believe our baby has an underlying health condition. DFACS says no, that's not necessary. We're just not going to let you have those tests.
Wouldn't that be evidence? Like, isn't that
That's like denying evidence. Like
exactly?
we're trying
It
to
is.
Yeah, that
It
what's
is.
called like the Brady files.
It is like Brady, right? So if you
Yeah.
think about it, it's like a district attorney or a prosecutor withholding exculpatory evidence, right? Because the more that these babies are tested, genetically tested, and it does come back that the baby has underlying health condition, it blows the DFACS case out of the water, right? So DFACS they're not going to admit that they're wrong.
Yep.
They're not going to say we jumped to judgment. We should have done our due diligence. The same thing with law enforcement, right? They've already gone out and arrested Matt Tucky, charged them as, child abusers. They're facing, decades in prison for a crime that never occurred. And so if you get the baby tested properly, what happens to both those cases? They're done.
So I am curious to know with the criminal side of it, that would be considered like Brady, like that is evidence that what was found medically as abuse. Here is evidence from other medical caregivers, physicians that say that what you think is wrong. That's evidence in your defense. Like,
It
can
is.
that, but on the criminal side also, like, it's not going to be able to be used.
So on the criminal side is going to be a little different. So the burden of proof in family court is not proof beyond reasonable doubt. The burden of proof is
Right.
really, really low, so preponderance of evidence. Whereas in criminal court, the burden of proof is, excuse me, the burden of proof is proof beyond reasonable doubt.
Mhm.
So we can use this documentation, and we have this documentation, and we can use it at criminal trial. We can use it at trial that specifically shows that DFACS was trying to subvert the family's efforts, the defense team's efforts to have their babies medically tested that would plausibly explain the
Mhm.
injuries that the baby presented with at CHOA a year or so ago.
Mhm.
So luckily, in superior court, hearsay is not admissible, whereas in juvenile court or family court, hearsay is admissible. So basically what a caseworker, a DFACS caseworker can do in family court is they can go in there and testify to their opinion. They can go and give their opinion and speak as if they are medical experts, whereas that's not going to fly in superior court. And so we're confident that when the case does go to trial, that we will be able to bring, the defense team will be able to bring to light just how underhanded DFACS has been to Matt and Tucky over the past year. And that's going to get me to the next point where in criminal court, the defense team, it was probably a month or so ago, maybe 2 months ago, filed a motion to have Matt and Tucky reunited, right? So we said these bond restrictions are unreasonable for a multitude of reasons, right? One of them is that the state is working on their case to prosecute them, and they are colluding with all the witnesses that they can gather up to prosecute Matt and Tucky. However, Matt and Tucky, who cannot even live together, cannot properly defend themselves because they're not able to communicate, even through their attorneys. They can't have meetings with their entire defense team together because they're restricted by their bond conditions to do so. So that was a due process issue that the defense team raised, and it was a really good argument, in my opinion. And then you look at it from the human respect, right? The human aspect of a husband and wife for a year are not even allowed to live together as husband and wife. They're not allowed to function as husband and wife. They're not allowed to be with their children without, I mean, like Matt and Tucky could not have joint visits with their own girls. They had to have separate visits with their children. So from the humanitarian perspective, that was another really good argument that the defense team raised. And ultimately the superior court judge ruled in their favor. And so
Just to explain the importance of that part, if you've ever talked to like a husband and wife and when you have kids and all these things, I love my husband so much more watching him be a dad. I can connect with him watching him parent my children, and that has been taken away from them. So that disconnect that is not humane, because when you create life with someone, that bond is like different. It's like way different. So they have taken that away from them,
Yeah.
which is awful. Is terrible.
it is. And one of the things that we've seen, Macy, over the past year before Matt and Tucky were able to live under the same home and have joint visits with their children, is that the bond between not only husband and wife had been fractured, but the bond between the core unit of the family, right? The bond between the children and mom and dad had been fractured. And so imagine having to visit your children, but the only time you get to visit your children is without your spouse. And not only is it without your spouse, you have to go into a visitation room where it's possibly recorded, or you have to go to some type of public setting and there's somebody watching your every move with your children, reporting back to DFACS how you behave with your children and how your children respond to you. Now, if you have that broken bond, how do you think a child's going to respond to their mother when their mother or father is almost a stranger to them? Because you're talking about babies who were taken away from their mom and dad when they were 3 months old or 2 years old. And a year later, mom and dad are trying to reestablish in a broken bond. And what does DFACS do? Oh, I think there's a bonding issue. I think there's a disconnect between mom and dad. I'm not so sure that, that they should be, back with their children, things of that nature. But what they fail to understand is they're the ones who created this disconnect between mom and dad and their children.
Yep.
And when you try to point that out, they look at you like you have like a third eye or something going on in your head, like you're the one who's just like off your rocker for suggesting that their actions, that DFAC's actions, could quite possibly harm a child. When in fact, that's all that's happened over the past years. Their actions have harmed not only the husband and wife, but have harmed their babies as well.
I mean, they've lost 2,000 children since the pandemic. How is that
Right.
not hurting children?
But I'm also
Yeah.
wondering, like, I hope they aren't married with children.
Oh, the DFACS workers?
Yeah, like, I understand that people have a job to do and you have to do the job you think you're supposed to do, or just do a good job to make money and support your family. But like, I don't see how you just keep letting this, like, who's gonna be the one that's like, yeah, you know what, this job ain't worth it. Like,
Mhm.
I'm not doing this. I don't care. I'm not doing it. I don't understand that part of it. Like, there's so many people involved that are just helping this continue. I don't.
It's leadership, Macy. So if you look at DFACS, the way it's organized or the way it's structured, has a really high turnover rate for employees. So it's not uncommon for a county office every 12 to 14 months to have a complete fruit basket turnover. So they lose all their employees other than the leadership, middle management and manager within that office. It's not uncommon for a DFACS office to have complete turnover.
And then they're just trying to prove themselves, or like keep, like,
Keep
okay,
the
I'm new at
facade
this
up.
job, so I gotta keep
Yep.
this job. And it's like, oh, cool, there's another rookie in here, so we can kind of tell them what to do, and they're just gonna do it because they just got this job and they want to keep their job.
Yeah.
It's so messed up, God.
It is messed up. As a matter of fact, when, prior to the new commissioner, Candace Broach coming in and taking over DFACS had a school for all its employees that was called the School of Excellence. So it was a training pipeline that all DFACS employees went through before they actually got out into the field and started doing their jobs. Well, they shut the school down. And so now they just do like online training where you have to just like click tab, like.
Yeah.
and just
I've had to
move
do
through
that.
this.
I have to do that like every 6 months for my work, and it's like job place and like a healthy job place, and sexual harassment, all these things. I'll be honest, I'm a weirdo and I find all those things very interesting. So I like really
Right.
read everything. But like, no, it's literally like, stay here for a second, hit
Yep.
this. Like common sense, what to answer.
Mhm.
And
That's
there's
not training.
It's not training because there's no, like, say for instance, Natalie, you're my trainer, right? You're my field trainer. You've got 10 years of experience. Me and Macy are the new employees, right? So you're gonna impart your wisdom and your knowledge and your experience onto us, and you're gonna show us the proper way to do things, right? Because you're the senior trainer, you're the senior individual in the office. You're gonna show us the way to do the paperwork, the way to interact with the moms and dads, the way to communicate, the way to document properly. And so now with budget cuts, they're going to remove Natalie from the equation. They're going to put me and Macy in front of a computer screen where we have to spend at least, 4 or 5 hours a day for upwards of 3 or 4 weeks, going just hitting tab, tab, tab. And there's no human interaction because
No,
Natalie's
yep.
removed from the equation.
All
So
the
how,
emotional
yeah.
humanity part aspect of it is gone.
And so when I do get to see Natalie, if I ever get to see Natalie, it's going to be with her telling me that I didn't do my paperwork right or I'm not doing something correctly. And so
Mhm.
how do I view Natalie at that point? There's a disconnect between me and Natalie because I'm thinking to myself, who is Natalie? Like where does she come from?
Yeah.
Oh, she's the boss, right? She's the mid management. And I'm like, well, I've never met her before.
Yep.
And so
The respect isn't there.
it's difficult to have that human connect.
Yep.
When you've been sitting in front of a computer. And so that's what you're seeing in a lot of these field offices, these DFACS offices in the county, is there's a disconnect because management has been there for a while. These new employees get there and they go, this is for the birds. I don't want nothing to do with this. They leave and they just fill in another warm body who might get to see Natalie after being employed there for, 4 or 5 weeks. And then what happens? They get upset with Natalie and they leave because, Natalie's so mean and she's so overbearing.
Mhm.
Because there's that lack of that human connection. And so
A lack of human connection in a department or I still don't want to call it an organization, that is supposed to take care of little human beings. Like,
Right, right. How am I supposed to be empathetic for a mother and father that I am helping when I get no empathy from the organization or no support from the organization that I'm working for, right?
Mhm.
How am I supposed to be expected to go out there and show empathy and respect for these mom and dad? But not only that is you're under like the most extreme amount of pressure of these organizations, right? Because there's such a spotlight that's shining on these employees because if they get it wrong, children could possibly die.
Mhm.
And so that's where you're going to see is a lot of those employees, they don't want that pressure. They're overworked and underpaid. The old adage, you know, you're overworked and underpaid, which is true. You are.
Yeah.
These positions require a college degree, 4 years. And so, you know, you tell somebody, hey, I'm gonna pay you, you know, $33,000 starting off. You're going to be responsible for the safety and welfare of abused children, potentially abused children, and we're going to give you what we're going to call like the best supervision that we can at the time, which is really zero to no supervision and no oversight and no training. And you're expecting your employees to thrive and you're expecting your employees to succeed and be successful under those conditions. And then when they are not, it's not the manager's fault, right? It's just that was a bad employee. You know, that
Mhm.
was just a bad employee. It can't be the management. So we see that a lot with these field offices and these county offices is there's such a high rate of turnover and there's lack of experience, right? If Natalie, again, I'm not picking on Natalie, right? I'm just using her as an
Hey, you've
example.
called me a boss. You've called me some good things in this video.
Okay, well, you are the boss now. But you know, if Natalie is my supervisor, right? And like we talked about, if the only time I see her is when I'm doing something wrong, then I'm just not going to go to Natalie and I'm just probably going to continue to do things wrong anyways, because regardless, I'm going to get yelled at or get written up or something like that, right? So it does take its emotional toll on the employees. And I'm not trying to make an excuse for them. I'm really not, but it's just it's part of the systemic issue that we're seeing here in Georgia, specifically with DFACS and caseworkers in the Child Protective Services Division of DFACS. And so it's just emblematic of an issue, like from a top down issue that we're seeing
Mhm.
that needs to be properly addressed.
I did find it, the irony in the budget cuts that had to be made. So they had to take the training school away. And I'm like, wait, why were there budget cuts when there are Title IV funds happening? Like,
Well, yeah, that's so the
I
Title
mean, I
IV
know they're
funds.
kind of all separate, but
Yeah,
it's like with all of this, there are the major obvious issues, but there are so many underlying and little things here. It's like stepping in a puddle and the puddle is obviously the problem, but what about like the splash that happens from that? It's like all these little drops are falling on everything and none of it's right.
Yeah.
None of it's right. But you can't fix the small things without fixing the big things, I guess, but it's a whole mess. Like this is a mess.
it's really it is a mess. I had I'll give an example. I had a friend of mine. I can't say his name because he's getting ready to publish a book. And he experienced this same situation in New England. And he asked me if I would read his book. He's a documentary filmmaker, and he asked me if I would read his book, just kind of proof it, just to see what I thought about it. And number one, it was heartbreaking. It was just absolutely heartbreaking for what him and his wife had to endure. And number two, it is chock full of factual information, cited information, and one of the tidbits of information that was in the book that really stood out to me. And don't hold me to these numbers, okay? Because I've just read over the book once. But say, for instance, each year the federal government allocates 6.5 billion with a B, $6.5 billion to help children in foster care, right? You go through the adoption process. Once they're in state's care, there's 6.5 billion with a B allocated for those type of scenarios. You want to guess how much money is allocated for the reunification process? Just kind of ballpark.
500,000.
So we're talking 6 billion, six with a B, for for adopting out children and putting them in state's care.
I don't know. I was gonna say between like
50.
750,000 to 5 million.
So you're actually really close. It's about $4.5 million. Million with an M. That's it. So you tell me where your priorities lie. We're going to adopt children out. We're going to keep them in foster care. We're going to care for them while they're in foster care, or we're going to reunite them with their mom and dad. 6 billion versus 4 million. So that tells me where their priority lies within the government about what they're doing with these children who are in state's care. It's off kilter, right? If you've got 6 billion to support children in the state system and get them adopted out, why isn't there 6 billion to help reunify these children with their parents?
Or 12 billion.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, let's get 12 billion. Let's do 6 because kids are in foster care and sometimes that's necessary and it is the best thing for the child or the only option for the child. But let's get 12 so then there can be 6 billion for reunification. Like what?
Right. I mean, if we're writing checks, right? If we're willing to just spend that money like it's growing on trees, why aren't we putting it back into the reunification of families? For example, in Georgia, we have a very low reunification rate. So once a child is put in the state's foster care system, reunification rate hovers around 33%. So if we want to compare that to our neighbor to the south of us in Florida, their reunification rate is about 66 to 67%, right? So what that tells me is the money that's being allocated from the federal government for these families is being properly spent in Florida and is being ill managed here in Georgia. It is
Mhm.
not going to where it needs to go. It's not going to the reunification so much as is going to like, let's just keep these children in foster care and adopt them out. So I'm not saying Florida is perfect, but what I'm saying is if you compare Florida to what's going on in Georgia, they're getting it right more often than not. Whereas in Georgia,
Trying to.
they're trying to. They're trying to.
At least it seems that way with just those facts alone.
Just those facts alone, mathematically, looking at the numbers,
Right.
you would on paper, you're saying, okay, Florida's getting it right more often
Yeah,
than
they're
not.
doing something different.
They're doing something different.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean they don't get it wrong. I know there's a
Yep.
family in Florida right now that I've been speaking with, and they're under these same nightmarish conditions that Matt and Tucky are under, and the rest of the families here in Georgia. But we just want to compare. I like to compare Georgia to our neighbors in the Southeast, right? So same thing with Tennessee, same thing with Alabama, same thing with South Carolina and North Carolina. The reunification rates in those states are much higher than Georgia's. And so it scares me because I do have friends who have young children. I have cousins who have young children. And one of a scary statistic that I read again when I was proofing this book was 1 in 20 children by the time they're 18. So 1 in 20 children across the nation by the time they're 18 will be in foster care at some point during their life. So think about how many millions upon millions of children there are in the United States. 1 in 20 is going to experience foster care. For a child who is in foster care and ages out, okay, someone who reaches the age of 18 while they're in foster care, by their 19th birthday, they will be homeless. By their 20th birthday, they will be in jail. Okay, so that tells me that foster care, at least while the state gets a child into foster care, continues to fail these children. Continues to fail these children. That number scared me, 1 in 20. And then I start thinking about, my children who are a little bit older now, but I start thinking about some of their friends who are, 18 and 19 years old, right? So, at one point in their life, they enter in foster care? And I think about I think right now there's close to 12,000 children in foster care in Georgia. I'm not sure how many are about to age out, but mathematically that's scary because a certain percentage of those 12,000 children in Georgia will be homeless by their 19th birthday or will be in jail by their 20th birthday. And this is federal data. This is studied data. It's not numbers that I'm making up, but stuff like that scares me because we can and should do better by these children, especially if the state says they're dependent upon its care for the safety and well-being of the child. If the state says, I'm going to seize your child from you because you are not fit to parent that child or care for that child, we are better off doing that than you are. And then they continue to fail these children. What does that say about the system that we have in place that's supposed to protect and help these children thrive?
It says they would rather get more of that $6 billion to fail children than care for the children.
I
Like-
would agree.
That money means more than that kid's life.
Yep.
I think it does.
Oh,
And we've seen that. And again, I can't just sit here and say, well, this is just something that I believe. This is something that I feel. I've seen it with each and every family that You Are the Power is helping. I've seen it with other moms and dads that I've talked with across the Southeast. Spoken with moms this week in Kentucky, one in North Carolina, one in Florida. So, there is a systemic issue at play here. And until somebody with a much higher pay grade than me steps up and does something about this, these children are going to continue to get harmed and suffer secondary trauma as a result of being put in the foster care system.
oh my gosh.
I need a copy of all those emails and
Right.
addresses,
Where we send things.
and I'm gonna do it religiously every day
I
until.
will send that stuff to you. I will send some of those statistics. I know you guys like
Oh, God.
statistics. I
Yeah.
will send all that stuff to you. And I will send you the citations for those statistics. So if anyone says, hey, where did you get that from? It's documented. I will say there is a little bit of good news, and I'm optimistic, hopefully optimistic. I had a phone call today with a representative from the Lieutenant Governor's office here in Georgia. It's one of the first steps in the right direction, I believe, to bringing about change. This particular representative was empathetic to what we had to say. They were open to these stories. I offered them to, hey, look, take a look at, this Rebecca Lindstrom with 11 Alive in Atlanta. She did a series called Help That Harms. I pointed them to Rebecca's work. I pointed them to our work. And I said, please take a look at this. And so he did, and he wants to do everything in his power to help these families. And so I'm looking forward to another meaningful conversation with him sometime next week. So that's the first little bit of light at the end of the tunnel that we've seen in about a year for all these families. Again, we've been reaching out to the governor's office daily, weekly, trying to get some type of response either from him or his chief of staff. At no point have they responded to our emails or our phone calls. There's a little contact us information you can log on there, request meetings with the governor. Of course, they get ignored. And so we've really been told almost behind the scenes, like, good luck getting in contact with the governor. Like, he's just not going to respond to you guys.
I might tweet and be like, I would really like to sit down with
With
Governor
Governor
Kemp.
Big fan.
Because if a million people see it, how do they?
How are they gonna say no?
Right.
Yeah, we've been begging. We have been literally been begging, like, this, please meet with us, Governor. Please meet with Spike Cohen. Please meet with members of the leadership team here in Georgia. Let's make these wrongs right.
Yeah.
Okay. Another family
And
doesn't
he's in
need
the
to suffer.
position to do that.
He is because his DFACS commissioner is appointed by him. Like,
Mhm.
he appointed the DFACS commissioner. So it reflects on him when DFACS is doing poorly. And so we just want that opportunity to sit down and have not a mean conversation, no pointing or yelling or nothing like that. We're talking about a respectful, open
Like,
dialogue.
hey, you do like, we want to share with you what is all going on. Like,
Right.
I mean, I'm sure I'm kind of being petty, but surely he knows what all's
Yeah.
going on.
Surely
Like,
not.
hey, did you know all of this is going on? Like, we could really use your help. And like, how do we change this? Because there's no way any normal human being, adult with a family and,
A conscience.
and 2 dimes to rub between their ears, like, doesn't be like, oh my gosh. And when you're sitting in a seat that can change things, how could you not?
Mhm.
Like, so I don't know, the lack of
Accountability.
Just the lack of acknowledgement and the lack of noise from his office to me speaks volumes. Like it's very quiet and that speaks louder.
Yeah.
It
Like,
does.
yeah, a vote for him is you're never gonna get heard.
Yep. And I hope
Because
you
we're
never
trying-
have a child that's born medically fragile
Exactly.
that has to go to a doctor 6 times in the first 8 weeks or 10 weeks of their life. Like I hope that
Yep.
never happens to you. Ugh.
It's disheartening, honestly.
Yes, it is.
And I don't have, and personally, I don't have a whole lot of faith in government officials, right? But when it comes to children, when
Right.
it comes to the well-being of the most vulnerable, the most defenseless members of society, the most defenseless folks in Georgia, the
And
children, right?
the purest and the most
Yes,
naturally loving beings,
And
the
the-
ones
yes,
who don't care about anything but I love you, you love me, I'm good to you, you're good to me, we're gonna play, this is gonna be great. Like genuinely, the most genuine human beings on the planet are children.
In the
yep.
future.
The
Yep.
future, yes, the future.
And this is not a partisan issue, right? This is not a Republican, Democrat, Independent. This is the most nonpartisan issue I can think of, and it's a child. And so you put all those political partisan nonsense aside for one second and say,
Yeah.
regardless, I'm going to do what's right for these moms and dads, these Georgians who have been adversely impacted. I'm going to do what's right. And it makes the most sense to me. And I don't understand why elected officials continuously, I know they're hearing what we have to say, but they're willingly ignoring our words. They are just willingly ignoring the moms and dads, the cries from help, whether it's from Brady and Carrie Timms or Corey and Diana Sullivan in South Georgia, Matt Tucky Hernandez. Like, I mean, they have been literally online on every social media platform possible for years, begging for somebody to listen to what they have to say. And no one has.
They're blatantly ignoring it because children can't give them anything
Yep.
in return.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. You're right though. Like, a
They're
4-year-old
like,
baby
well,
can't
I
vote.
can't get their vote. I can't get this investment. I can't get this. I can't get that.
Yeah.
Which is still absolutely disgusting because I'm like, how do you sleep at night?
Yeah, I ask myself the same thing. I mean, I really and truly do before I go to bed at night. I sleep okay because I know I'm out here doing what I can for these families. We are working nonstop for these families. And so I sleep good knowing that. And it still breaks my heart when I wake up and I see, posts from like Brady and Carrie,
They
Tim's,
just
where it's like,
celebrated their
Mhm.
anniversary
Yeah.
yesterday.
yeah, yep. And I look at that and I think, they're not with their boys, they're not with their babies. Or Carrie, I absolutely love Carrie, and she is so eloquent when she posts on social media, and she's consistently like factually accurate. So she'll put information up there. Well, it's day 893. I haven't had my boys at home with me.
Mhm.
Who's going to listen to me? Hey, Governor Kemp, we're at day 900. Why are you ignoring me?
Mhm.
And so it's sad that moms and dads have to endure this nightmare, but it's even more troubling that those in a position of power to do something about it to help are just choosing to remain silent.
Mm. They are so strong. Oh my
Yeah,
God,
they are.
these parents are so strong. They're that guy. He just needs to go with
Yeah.
this loud car. No, they're so strong. I always find it very fascinating and outside of this, like other cases that we've covered where there's missing children and things like that. I'm like, as a mom, I know as a mom that you always find a way to just one foot in front of the other and
Yeah.
you're not going to lose your shit and you're going to not make it worse, but you're going to do something every single day and you're going to make it happen. But like, still, like, it's so fascinating to me the strength that these parents have to endure literally, and not just that, but like endure everything they are going through, but then also keep your child at the forefront as the priority when it seems like nobody else is. Like nobody. It's just, it's
I don't see how they do it.
amazing. I don't either. Like it is amazing
I
the strength that they have and the love for their children that they have to
Mhm.
keep themselves in a space to keep fighting for their
Mhm.
kids, for their families. Like that's just, it's
I'll
unreal.
I'll tell the moms and dads quite frequently. I say, look, I draw my strength from you. Like
Mhm.
in order to for us to continue this fight, the entire team draws their strength from these moms and dads.
Yeah.
We get around conversations, go out to dinner, go to events, go to rallies, and it's very rare that you see them, without a look of determination on their face. But behind that look of determination is also there's a smile.
Mhm.
These are human beings. These are moms and dads, husbands and wives, and they're drawn from a strength that I just don't know if I have inside of me. I would like to think I do, but the reality is they're some of the most fierce, strong human beings I have ever been around, ever.
Absolutely. I
And
don't know them personally yet, hopefully. But no, it's just astounding like what they are continuously capable of. Um I don't know how either. I don't
Yeah.
know. I would have been in prison.
we need to all try to get together and like go do something. Like maybe we can all come up to
Yeah.
Chattanooga and go like out to dinner or go do something
Mhm.
like, go do something like, you guys know your city better than we do. So like
Yeah.
maybe go do something like
You should go axe throwing.
Oh yeah, we should go axe throwing. We could put up a picture of Kemp and I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
no, we
I'll say that.
we
No, we could go to like a Lookouts game.
Yeah, lookouts
Or we could
game.
do like
We
the
have two soccer teams.
Mhm.
There's the
Yeah.
aquarium, the zoo.
The aquarium is so cool.
it's been
So,
probably 20 something years since I've been to the aquarium. It's been quite
so
a long
cool.
time.
And the penguins and the
Oh
butterflies.
yeah, they've upgraded since you've been.
Uh,
No, there's a few other cool things too, because I'm just like, God, it's so hot in the summer. Like we would have to
We could have a
be
pool party.
hey, everybody's welcome to at my
we
house.
I promise you, the moms and dad would appreciate it. So we're always looking for something to do just to kind of give them a
Yes.
break from the harsh reality that they're under, even if it's nothing more than for 4 or 5 hours, 6 hours in an afternoon. So
We should plan.
Are any of them, I'm like, oh, we should go up to Prentice Cooper, like, and because you can hike, we could take the Jeeps and go four-wheeling. It's like easy four-wheeling. But I'm
Yeah.
just like, what's outside? Because I always feel like outside is good. Fresh air,
it is good.
sunshine.
It is good.
Oh, Coolidge Park is cool.
Mhm.
The walking bridge.
Yeah. Okay, we're getting off topic here. We're
No,
not
I
planning a
know.
party.
Yeah. So
We're-
don't tell them that we're planning something. Like we can't
Okay.
tell them that we're planning something. It'll be our
Okay.
secret.
Yeah.
Okay.
We should
All
do
right.
that.
I've got to edit this out. Remember to edit out.
Yeah. Edit out the
Edit
get
in.
together.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll just surprise them.
Okay.
Yeah, we
But,
just gotta figure out what would work best for them and we'll make it happen.
Yeah, we'll make it happen for sure.
Yeah. Let me know. I'll coordinate on our end. We'll make it.
Perfect.
Well, awesome. Good luck tomorrow and give Matt and Tucky our love.
Yes.
Let them know that this episode that we just recorded will be out this Monday.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
coming up.
Okay.
And then I've got Carolyn's mom's information. I'll set up that.
Yep.
We need to get some kind of act or law together
Yes.
for when this happens.
Yes.
Is there any kind of
Yes.
Yeah. There's a
Yeah.
new law in Texas
Okay.
that passed that we as individuals would like to see enacted here in Georgia.
Okay.
And so I know the moms and dads that we're supporting have read the law, the Texas law. They support that law. It's just a matter of getting, someone within the General Assembly to have the courage to stand up and do what's right.
Yeah, I feel like my bells just went off because I feel like with PCOS and like going to Capitol
Mhm.
Hill and stuff, I'm like, okay, yep, about to go read this law. I'm about to figure out who we need to talk to.
Yeah, Macy went to our representative Chuck Fleischman
Like
a few years
every,
ago.
I went for like 4 years in a row.
We
Ugh.
both have PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome.
Yeah.
That's kind of how we met. Like we met, she was at a radio function or something, and I took her picture and just sent it to her. And she was like, "Hey, can I come
On the
on the
radio,
radio and talk about PCOS Day, which is
like
September
World
1st?"
PCOS Day.
And I was like, "Well,
Yeah.
actually, I have it." And literally, I was like, "Yeah, come." And she was like, "Can MTV come?" And I was like, "Sure." And then no more than 30 minutes later, my boss calls and said, "Did you say that MTV could come film here?" And I was like, "Well, yeah."
Why not?
So,
Question. Can
Yep.
you tell me who might be like the representative or someone who's over the Tennessee part of You Are the Power?
Let me
Or
look,
or you
'cause-
can email it to me or something.
you.
Oh, we're about to be dangerous.
when I was looking at my phone, I was joking around like, let me see, but it's
Oh, okay. Perfect.
so
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
so if you guys ever need anything from us, we can hold events up there in Tennessee, and we can like,
Yeah.
co-sponsor things and draw awareness to what's going on, not only here in Georgia, but for what's going on in Tennessee as well.
You want to know what's crazy is I'm already thinking we should do something like literally on the Georgia Tennessee state line because Chattanooga like
Oh, I could spit, and then I'm at the Georgia Tennessee.
that's
line.
what I mean, and it's like you
Yeah.
get the best of both worlds for both
Yeah.
states.
Yeah.
Because we're like right on the line.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yep.
Yeah, we have
So-
so
Okay,
much
we
work
have
to do.
so much work to do. We gotta get
Yeah.
off the phone now.
Yeah, you guys just tell me what you need from me,
Okay.
and we can make it happen in Tennessee as well. So I just took over the Southeast, and so Tennessee is one of my states, and so we will absolutely reciprocate this relationship. You guys have been fantastic to us. I'm so appreciative, and so I will get in my little car and drive up there and help you guys do whatever you need to do.
Yep.
Okay, well,
Thank you. And if
you.
there's ever, I mean, I know we'll definitely be speaking again, but anything we could ever help with or share or show up to, anything
Yep.
like that, always let us know.
Okay.
And or if you're like, hey, I've got a story I need to tell or something I need to share, I need to be on expired again.
Yeah, if
Just
you
call
need
us.
something,
Like,
yeah.
it's an open door policy
Yes.
at this point.
Okay.
Yes.
No, thank you guys so much. And I won't use Natalie. I won't use you again as like in the analogy as like the bad boss. I'll have to use myself or Macy or something like that. So you're off the hook. You're off the hook for the next episode.
We'll take turns.
Yeah.
I'm glad. I would be glad to be called the bad boss because I am.
Yeah. You're a great boss.
Oh, good.
You mean bad boss.
Baddie.
Bad, not as in bad, but bad as in good.
Badass.
Like
Yeah.
bad.
Badass
Yeah.
boss.
Yeah.
You're
That's-
bad. Good kind of bad.
All right.
All right.
Yeah. Tell Matt and Tucky we
I
said
will.
hello and hug them for us and the Tims
will.
too.
And text us tomorrow after
Yep.
this.
Yep. I will be on the road, but we have eyes and ears in the courtroom. I'm heading back from Charleston to Atlanta tomorrow, probably around 11, about the time they get kicked off in court.
Okay.
So I'll have people in the courtroom give me updates as they come in, and I will send you a text and let you know what's going on.
Okay,
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right.
so
Thank
much.
you.
You're the best.
Oh, you guys are the best. I promise.
Okay,
Thank y'all
talk
so
soon.
much.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.
This episode was recorded on June 11th. On Wednesday, June 12th of 2024, a Forsyth County judge, at the request of DFACS, closed the case against Matt and Tucky Hernandez, ending their year-long legal battle to have their children placed with relatives while they continue to fight their pending criminal charges in Superior Court. DFACS is no longer involved in their lives. While restrictive bond conditions prohibit Matt and Tucky from unsupervised visits with their children, they are super grateful that the girls are no longer in the corrupt Georgia foster care system and they're no longer living with strangers. The girls are now in the loving care of family. Matt and Tucky are forever thankful to everyone for the outpouring of love and support for their family. Thank you so much for listening. This is the Expired Podcast.